Maya-chan had always been different from other children in her village. While her friends played with dolls and toy soldiers, she spent her afternoons in the old library, reading ancient books about creatures that once soared through the skies. Her grandmother often told her stories about dragons, magnificent beings that ruled the heavens before humans forgot how to speak with them. Most people in the village thought these were just fairy tales, but Maya felt something deep in her heart whenever she heard these stories. On her 15th birthday, everything changed. Maya was walking home from school through the forest path when she heard a sound that made her blood turn cold. It was a cry of pain, deep and rumbling, unlike anything she had ever heard before. Her friends would have run away, but Maya felt something pulling her toward the sound. She pushed through the thick bushes and climbed over fallen logs, following the mysterious noise deeper into the woods. What she found behind a massive oak tree took her breath away. A dragon lay wounded on the forest floor, its magnificent scales dulled with pain and exhaustion. The creature was smaller than the dragons in her grandmother's stories, about the size of a large horse, but still absolutely beautiful. Its scales shimmered between blue and silver, and its eyes held an intelligence that made Maya's heart race. The dragon had a terrible wound on its left wing, and blood seeped from several cuts across its body. Maya could see that hunters had been tracking it, probably for days. Dragon hunting had been illegal for over a century, but some people still believed that dragon scales and blood could make them wealthy. Maya felt anger burn in her chest as she realized what had happened to this poor creature. She approached slowly, her hands raised to show she meant no harm. The dragon watched her with careful eyes, ready to defend itself despite its injuries. Maya had read in the old books that dragons were telepathic, able to speak mind to mind with those who had the gift. She had never tried to communicate this way before, but something inside her knew what to do. "I want to help you," she thought as clearly as she could, focusing all her attention on the dragon's eyes. "Please let me help you." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a whisper in her mind, she heard a voice. It was tired and full of pain, but unmistakably real. "Why would a human help me? Your kind has hunted mine to near extinction." Maya felt tears in her eyes as she realized she was actually communicating with a dragon. "Because it's wrong what they did to you. Because you're magnificent and don't deserve to suffer." The dragon studied her face for a long moment, then slowly lowered its head. "My name is Ethan. I am the last of my kind in these mountains. If you truly wish to help, I will accept your aid, young human." Maya spent the rest of that afternoon cleaning Ethan's wounds with water from a nearby stream and bandaging them with strips torn from her school uniform. She had no idea what she was doing, but her hands seemed to know exactly how to treat the injuries. As she worked, Ethan told her about his life in hiding, always moving from place to place to avoid the hunters who tracked him. "I have been alone for 7 years, Ethan explained, his mental voice growing stronger as Maya cared for him. "The last of my family was killed when I was barely more than a hatchling. I have lived in caves and hidden valleys, never staying anywhere long enough to call it home." Maya felt her heart breaking for this lonely creature. "You don't have to be alone anymore," she said, both out loud and in her mind. "I'll help you. I'll find a way to keep you safe." As the sun began to set, Maya realized she had to go home or her parents would worry. She promised Ethan she would return the next day with proper medical supplies and food. The dragon watched her leave with something that might have been hope in his ancient eyes. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Ethan lying wounded in the forest, and about all the stories her grandmother had told her. She remembered one story in particular, about humans and dragons who worked together centuries ago, before fear and greed drove them apart. Her grandmother had said that some humans were born with the gift to communicate with dragons, to form bonds that could last lifetimes. The next morning, Maya told her parents she was going on a nature photography trip with friends from school. She packed a backpack with bandages, antiseptic, and as much food as she could carry without raising suspicion. She also brought one of her grandmother's old books about dragon care, hoping it might contain useful information. When she returned to the clearing, Ethan was sitting up, looking much better than the day before. The bleeding had stopped, and some color had returned to his scales. "You came back," he said, and Maya could hear surprise in his mental voice. Of course I came back, Maya replied, settling down beside him with her supplies. I promised I would. As she changed his bandages, Ethan began to tell her more about dragon society and culture. Dragons, he explained, were not the mindless beasts that humans believed them to be. They had their own language, their own history, and their own complex emotions. They formed deep bonds with their families and could live for thousands of years if left in peace. Long ago, Ethan said, my people lived alongside humans. We shared knowledge and protected each other from dangers. Dragons helped humans build their greatest cities, and humans helped dragons understand the changing world. But then, humans grew afraid of our power and began to see us as threats rather than allies. Maya listened with fascination as Ethan described the ancient partnership between their species. She learned that dragons were natural guardians of the earth, able to sense changes in weather patterns, predict earthquakes, and even help plants and animals thrive. In return, humans had provided dragons with companionship and helped them understand human society. The bond between a human and dragon was sacred, Ethan explained. It required trust, respect, and a special gift that only some humans possessed. These humans were called dragon tamers, though the word tamer is misleading. We were never tamed. We chose to work together as equals. As the days passed, Maya developed a routine. She would attend school during the week, then spend every free moment with Ethan. She brought him food, helped his wounds heal, and listened to his stories about the old days. In return, Ethan began teaching her about dragon abilities and the ancient bond between their species. You have the gift, Ethan told her one afternoon as they sat by the stream. I can sense it in you. Your ability to communicate with me, the way you instinctively knew how to care for my wounds, the fact that you were drawn to help me instead of running away. All of these are signs of a dragon tamer. Maya felt both excited and terrified by this revelation. But what does that mean? What am I supposed to do with this gift? That is up to you, Ethan replied. The old ways are forgotten, and there are no teachers left to guide you. But if you are willing to learn, I can teach you what I know about the bond between our kinds. Over the following weeks, Ethan began Maya's education in the ancient arts of dragon partnership. He taught her how to strengthen their mental connection, how to understand dragon emotions and body language, and how to sense the magical energy that all dragons possessed. Maya discovered that she could actually feel Ethan's emotions as if they were her own, and that their bond grew stronger each day. She also learned that their connection went both ways. Ethan began to understand human emotions and motivations better through his bond with Maya. He started to remember what it had been like when dragons and humans trusted each other, before centuries of fear and violence had driven them apart. I had forgotten, Ethan admitted one evening as they watched the sunset together, what it felt like to have a true friend. Dragons are not meant to live alone. We are social creatures, just as humans are. These years of isolation have been the hardest part of my existence. Maya reached out and gently touched Ethan's snout, marveling at how warm and smooth his scales felt. You're not alone anymore, she said firmly. We're partners now. I'll never abandon you. As Ethan's wounds healed and their bond deepened, Maya began to notice changes in herself. Her senses seemed sharper, and she occasionally experienced flashes of insight about people and situations that she couldn't explain. She found herself more confident and decisive, as if Ethan's ancient wisdom was somehow becoming part of her own knowledge. She also began to understand why dragons had been feared by humans. During their training sessions, Ethan demonstrated some of his abilities, and Maya was amazed by his power. He could breathe a stream of blue flame hot enough to melt stone, fly at incredible speeds despite his injured wing, and lift objects many times his own weight with his mind alone. But what impressed Maya most was his intelligence and emotional depth. Ethan was wiser and more thoughtful than most adults she knew. 1 month after their first meeting, disaster struck. Maya arrived at their usual meeting place to find Ethan agitated and pacing back and forth in the clearing. The hunters have found my trail again, he said, his mental voice tight with worry. I can smell their tracking hounds, and I heard their voices in the distance this morning. I must leave this place. Maya's heart sank. She had grown to love their daily meetings, and the thought of Ethan leaving filled her with despair. "Where will you go?" she asked. "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "There are fewer and fewer places where a dragon can hide safely. The human population has grown so large that even the most remote areas are no longer truly isolated." That night, Maya lay awake thinking about Ethan's situation. She couldn't bear the thought of him spending the rest of his life running and hiding, always afraid, always alone except for her brief visits. There had to be a better solution, but she couldn't think of what it might be. The next morning, Maya made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Instead of going to school, she packed a large backpack with supplies and headed to the forest. When she reached the clearing, she found Ethan preparing to leave, his few possessions gathered in a small pile. "I'm coming with you," Maya announced. Ethan looked at her in shock. "Maya, no. You have a life here, a family who loves you, an education to complete. I cannot ask you to give up everything to live as a fugitive with me." "You're not asking," Maya replied firmly. "I'm choosing. You said yourself that dragons aren't meant to live alone, and neither are dragon tamers. We're partners now, which means we face these challenges together." "But your parents will worry sick about you," Ethan protested. "They'll think you've been kidnapped or killed." Maya had thought about this problem all night. "I'll leave them a letter explaining that I'm safe and that I'll contact them when I can. I know it will hurt them, but this is something I have to do. I can feel it in my bones, Ethan. This is my destiny." Ethan stared at her for a long moment, and Maya could feel the conflict in his emotions. He was touched by her loyalty but horrified at the thought of taking her away from her normal life. Finally, he sighed deeply, and Maya felt his resignation through their bond. "If this is truly your choice," he said slowly, "then I accept your partnership. But you must understand what you're giving up. Life with me will be dangerous and uncertain. We will have to hide from both the hunters and from ordinary people who might betray us. There will be cold nights sleeping in caves, meals of whatever we can hunt or forage, and always the risk of discovery." "I understand," Maya said, though she wasn't entirely sure she did. All she knew was that she couldn't let Ethan face the world alone anymore. "We'll figure it out together." And so, on a cool autumn morning, Maya Chen disappeared from her ordinary life to begin an extraordinary adventure. She left a tearful letter for her parents, promising them she was safe and that she would find a way to contact them again someday. Then, she climbed onto Ethan's back, and together they flew away from everything she had ever known. Flying on Ethan's back was nothing like Maya had imagined from her childhood dreams. The wind was fierce and cold, making her eyes water and her hair whip around her face. She had to grip tightly to the ridges between Ethan's scales to keep from sliding off, and her stomach churned as they soared over valleys and mountains she had never seen before. But, despite the discomfort, Maya felt a sense of freedom and wonder that made her heart sing. "Hold on tight," Ethan called to her through their mental link as they approached a range of jagged peaks. "We're going to land in a place I discovered years ago. It should be safe, at least for a while." They descended toward what looked like a solid rock face, but, as they got closer, Maya saw that there was actually a hidden valley tucked between the mountains. Ethan glided through a narrow gap in the rocks, and, suddenly, they were surrounded by towering stone walls that blocked out most of the sky. At the bottom of the valley was a small lake fed by a waterfall, and patches of green grass dotted the rocky floor. "This is incredible," Maya breathed as Ethan landed gently beside the lake. "How did you find this place?" "I stumbled across it while fleeing from hunters 3 years ago," Ethan explained, lowering himself so Maya could slide down from his back. "The entrance is almost impossible to see from the air unless you know exactly where to look. I've never seen any sign that humans have been here." Maya looked around the hidden valley with amazement. It felt like they had found their own private world, completely cut off from the troubles of human civilization. She could understand why Ethan had chosen this place as a refuge. Their first few days in the valley were challenging as they worked out the basic details of living together. Maya had never camped outdoors for more than a single night, and she quickly discovered that survival in the wilderness required skills she had never learned. Ethan helped as much as he could, using his flame breath to start fires and his keen eyesight to spot edible plants, but there was still much that Maya had to figure out on her own. She learned to build a shelter using fallen branches and leaves to purify water from the lake, and to identify which berries and roots were safe to eat. Ethan caught fish from the lake and occasionally hunted small game, sharing his meals with Maya after cooking them with his flame breath. It was a simple life, but Maya found herself enjoying the peaceful rhythm of their days. As weeks passed, Maya and Ethan developed a deeper understanding of each other. Their mental connection grew stronger, allowing them to share not just thoughts but emotions and memories. Maya began to experience fragments of Ethan's long life, seeing through his eyes as he soared over pristine forests and untouched mountains. In return, Ethan gained insight into human nature through Maya's memories of family, school, and friendships. "Your people are more complex than I remembered," Ethan observed one evening as they sat by their campfire. "I had forgotten that humans are capable of such deep love and loyalty. The hunters and those who fear us represent only a small part of humanity." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "Most people have just never had the chance to meet a dragon. They base their opinions on old stories and rumors rather than real experience. If they could meet you, talk to you like I do, they would see how wrong they've been." "Perhaps," Ethan said, though Maya could sense his skepticism through their bond. "But fear is a powerful force, and humans have feared dragons for many generations. It would take something extraordinary to change their minds." During their conversations, Ethan continued to teach Maya about the ancient arts of dragon taming. She learned to sense his emotions from great distances, to communicate with him even when they were separated by miles, and to draw upon the magical energy that flowed between them. Maya discovered that their bond gave her enhanced physical abilities as well. She could run faster and jump higher than before, her reflexes were quicker, and her endurance seemed almost limitless. "These abilities come from our connection," Ethan explained during one of their training sessions. Dragon tamers of old were formidable warriors and explorers because they could draw upon their dragon partner's strength. In return, dragons gained access to human creativity and adaptability. Maya was fascinated by these revelations, but she also began to understand the responsibility that came with her abilities. She was no longer just an ordinary human girl, she was the inheritor of an ancient tradition that had been lost for centuries. The knowledge and skills that Ethan was teaching her might be the key to restoring the partnership between dragons and humans. Their peaceful life in the hidden valley was interrupted one morning when Ethan returned from his daily flight with disturbing news. "I saw smoke rising from the forest below," he reported, his mental voice tense with worry. "There are men camped near the base of the mountains, and I spotted tracking equipment among their supplies." Maya felt her stomach clench with fear. "The dragon hunters found your trail?" "It appears so," Ethan confirmed. "They haven't discovered this valley yet, but it's only a matter of time. Their technology has improved since the old days. They have devices that can detect the magical energy signatures that dragons emit." Maya paced back and forth beside the lake, her mind racing as she tried to think of a solution. "Can we stay hidden until they give up and leave?" "Unlikely," Ethan said grimly. "These particular hunters are professionals. I recognize their leader from encounters in other regions. He's been tracking me for over 2 years, and he won't give up easily. His name is Victor Reeves, and he's made a fortune selling dragon parts to collectors and black market dealers." The name sent a chill down Maya's spine. She had read newspaper articles about Victor Reeves during her research about dragons. He was wanted by law enforcement in multiple countries, but he was clever enough to always stay one step ahead of the authorities. Reeves claimed to be conducting scientific research, but everyone knew he was really a poacher who cared nothing for the creatures he hunted. "What do we do?" Maya asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, and Maya could feel him wrestling with difficult emotions through their bond. Finally, he spoke. "There is only one solution I can see. I must leave this place and lead the hunters away from you. Once they're gone, you can return to your human life and forget about dragons." "Absolutely not," Maya said immediately, her voice fierce with determination. "We're partners, remember? I'm not going back to my old life, and I'm certainly not letting you face those hunters alone. Maya, be reasonable, Ethan pleaded. Reeves and his men are dangerous. They have weapons specifically designed to kill dragons, and they won't hesitate to hurt anyone who gets in their way. I couldn't live with myself if something happened to you because of me. And I couldn't live with myself if I let you sacrifice yourself to protect me, Maya shot back. There has to be another way. We just need to think of it. That night, Maya lay awake staring at the stars visible through the narrow opening at the top of the valley. She thought about everything Ethan had taught her about dragons and dragon tamers, searching for some piece of knowledge that might help them. As dawn approached, an idea began to form in her mind. Ethan, she said, shaking him gently awake. You told me that dragon tamers used to be formidable warriors, right? That they could draw upon their dragon partner's abilities to fight when necessary? Yes, Ethan replied cautiously. But, Maya, these hunters have modern weapons. Courage and enhanced reflexes won't protect you from high-powered rifles and tranquilizer darts. What if we didn't fight them directly? Maya asked. What if we used their own methods against them? She explained her plan as the sun rose over the valley walls. It was risky and would require perfect timing, but it might be their only chance to stop Victor Reeves permanently. Ethan listened with growing interest, and Maya could feel his excitement building through their bond. It could work, he admitted. But, if we fail, there will be no second chances. Reeves will kill me and probably you as well. Then, we won't fail, Maya said with more confidence than she actually felt. We're partners, remember? Together, we can do anything. They spent the morning preparing for their dangerous plan. Maya gathered supplies and equipment while Ethan scouted the hunters' camp from high above, memorizing their positions and routines. As afternoon approached, they were ready to put their plan into action. The first step was to lure the hunters into a specific location where Maya and Ethan would have the advantage. Ethan flew low over their camp, making sure he was visible but staying out of rifle range. As expected, the hunters immediately began pursuing him, following the tracking signals from their equipment as he led them deeper into the mountains. Maya, meanwhile, used her enhanced speed and agility to reach a position above the narrow canyon where Ethan was leading the hunters. She carried a backpack full of rocks and other projectiles, along with a few supplies they had salvaged from abandoned campsites over the years. When the hunters entered the canyon, Maya was ready for them. Using her mental connection with Ethan, she coordinated their attack perfectly. As Ethan swooped down to distract the hunters with his flame breath, Maya began hurling rocks with superhuman accuracy, targeting their equipment rather than the men themselves. The hunters' expensive tracking devices shattered under the impact of Maya's precisely thrown stones. Their communication radios were destroyed, and several of their weapons were damaged or knocked out of reach. The men found themselves trapped in the canyon with a very angry dragon above them and an invisible attacker raining down projectiles from the cliffs. This is impossible! Victor Reeves shouted, diving for cover behind a boulder as another rock smashed into the canyon wall inches from his head. There's someone else up there. Maya felt a fierce satisfaction as she watched the hunters panic and scramble for safety. For years, these men had terrorized dragons and other protected species, always feeling secure in their superior technology and firepower. Now they were the ones who were afraid and helpless. But Maya's plan was about more than just defeating the hunters. She and Ethan had discussed this at length, and they both agreed that simply driving Reeves away would only postpone the problem. The hunter would return with better equipment and more men, and the cycle would continue. They needed a permanent solution. As the hunters cowered in the canyon, Maya began the second phase of her plan. She activated a small recording device she had brought with her and began documenting everything she could see and hear. She recorded Reeves giving orders to his men, captured images of their illegal weapons and equipment, and documented their location in the protected wilderness area where hunting was strictly forbidden. Meanwhile, Ethan used his abilities to gather evidence of the hunters' other crimes. His keen eyesight spotted the hidden storage areas where they kept their illegal dragon hunting equipment, and his enhanced memory allowed him to perfectly recall the license plates of their vehicles and other identifying information. When they had gathered enough evidence, Maya and Ethan began the final phase of their plan. Instead of continuing to attack the hunters, they withdrew to a safe distance and used a satellite phone Maya had borrowed from an abandoned research station to contact the authorities. "This is an emergency report of illegal poaching activity in the Cascade Mountain Wilderness area," Maya said when the park rangers answered her call. "Multiple armed men are hunting protected species with prohibited weapons. I can provide exact coordinates and photographic evidence." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, the valley was swarming with park rangers, federal wildlife agents, and local police. The hunters found themselves surrounded and facing serious federal charges for weapons violations, trespassing in protected areas, and conspiracy to commit wildlife trafficking. From their hidden vantage point, Maya and Ethan watched as Victor Reeves and his men were arrested and their equipment confiscated. The evidence Maya and Ethan had gathered was more than enough to ensure convictions, and Reeves's long career as a dragon hunter was finally over. "We did it," Maya breathed, hardly able to believe their plan had actually worked. "We really did it." "Yes," Ethan agreed, and Maya could feel his relief and pride through their bond. "But, more importantly, we did it together. Neither of us could have accomplished this alone." As they watched the authorities clean up the hunters' abandoned camp, Maya realized that their victory represented something larger than just stopping one group of poachers. They had proven that dragons and humans could work together to solve problems that neither species could handle alone. They had demonstrated the power and potential of the ancient partnership that had once existed between their kinds. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" Maya asked, already knowing the answer. "I believe it is," Ethan replied. "We have shown that the old ways are not truly lost. Perhaps it's time to consider whether other humans might be ready to learn about dragons again." That evening, as they celebrated their victory by the lake in their hidden valley, Maya and Ethan began to discuss what their future might hold. They had faced their first real test as partners and emerged victorious, but Maya sensed that even greater challenges lay ahead. The world was a complicated place, full of people who would always fear what they didn't understand. Changing centuries of mistrust and hatred would not be easy. But, for the first time since meeting Ethan, Maya felt genuinely hopeful about the future. They had proven that dragons and humans could work together as equals, combining their unique strengths to accomplish what neither could do alone. If they could find other humans with the gift and the courage to accept dragons as partners rather than enemies, perhaps the ancient alliance could be restored. As she drifted off to sleep beside the campfire, with Ethan's warm presence comforting her through their mental bond, Maya dreamed of a world where dragons once again soared openly through the skies, where children grew up hearing stories of dragon partnerships instead of dragon slaying, and where the gifts she was learning to master could be used to heal the ancient wounds between their species. The last dragon's Tamer had taken her first steps toward becoming something far greater, a bridge between two worlds that had been separated by fear for far too long. 6 months after their victory over Victor Reeves and his hunters, Maya and Ethan had settled into a new routine in their hidden valley. The capture of the notorious poacher had made international news, though the media reports focused on the illegal weapons and wildlife trafficking charges rather than mentioning dragons specifically. Most people assumed the hunters had been targeting wolves or bears, which was exactly what Maya and Ethan wanted them to believe. During their quiet months in the valley, Maya had continued her training as a dragon tamer, and her abilities had grown far beyond what either of them had thought possible. She could now communicate with Ethan across distances of several miles, sense his emotions and physical condition even when they were separated, and draw upon his magical energy to enhance her own strength and speed dramatically. More surprisingly, Maya had begun to develop abilities that went beyond the traditional dragon tamer skills that Ethan remembered from the old days. She could sometimes sense the emotions of wild animals in the forest, and, on rare occasions, she even seemed to understand their basic thoughts and intentions. Plants grew more vigorously in areas where she spent time, and she had developed an almost supernatural ability to predict weather changes and natural disasters. "These new abilities puzzle me," Ethan admitted during one of their evening conversations. "The ancient texts spoke of dragon tamers who could communicate with all living things, but I assumed those were just legends. Perhaps the gift is stronger in you than it was in others, or perhaps the long separation between our species has changed something fundamental about the bond." Maya was equally confused by her expanding abilities, but she had learned to trust the instincts that came with them. When she felt a sudden urge to move their camp to higher ground, they would inevitably discover the next morning that heavy rains had flooded their usual sleeping area. When she sensed anxiety from the wildlife in a particular direction, they would later learn that hikers or researchers had passed through that area. Their peaceful existence was interrupted one morning when Maya woke with a feeling of urgency and distress that didn't come from Ethan. She sat up quickly, trying to identify the source of her unease, and gradually became aware that something was calling to her from far away. "Ethan," she said, shaking her dragon partner awake. "Something's wrong. There's another dragon out there, and it's in trouble." Ethan's eyes snapped open immediately. "That's impossible. I am the last dragon in this part of the world. I would know if there were others nearby." "I can feel it," Maya insisted, her voice growing more urgent. "It's injured and afraid, and it's calling for help. The feeling is coming from somewhere to the north, maybe 200 or 300 miles away." Ethan closed his eyes and extended his own senses, searching for any trace of another dragon's presence. After several long moments, he opened his eyes with an expression of shock and wonder. "You're right. There is someone, calling out. But how is this possible? And how can you sense another dragon when I cannot?" Maya was already gathering supplies and preparing to leave. "I don't know how or why, but we have to help. Whatever's out there, it's in real danger." They took flight immediately, with Maya riding on Ethan's back as they soared northward toward the source of the distress call that only she could clearly hear. As they traveled, Maya guided their direction based on the intensity of the feelings she was receiving. The emotions became stronger and more desperate as they flew, confirming that they were heading in the right direction. After several hours of flight, they reached a remote mountain range that had been devastated by recent forest fires. The landscape below them was a wasteland of blackened trees and ash-covered ground, with only a few patches of green vegetation remaining in areas that had been protected by rocky outcroppings or water sources. "There," Maya said, pointing toward a narrow canyon that cut through the burned mountainside. "It's down there, hidden in that ravine." They descended carefully, alert for any signs of danger. As they approached the canyon floor, Maya gasped at what she saw waiting for them. Huddled beneath an overhang of rock was another dragon, but this one was unlike any creature Maya had ever imagined. The dragon was smaller than Ethan, no larger than a pony, and its scales were a deep emerald green that shimmered with gold highlights. But what shocked Maya most was that the dragon was clearly female, and nestled beside her were 3 tiny dragonlings, each no bigger than a house cat. The mother dragon's eyes were filled with exhaustion and desperation as she watched Ethan and Maya approach. "Incredible," Ethan breathed, his mental voice filled with awe. "I thought I was truly the last. But here is Lyralii, whom I knew many years ago, and she has managed to raise young ones in secret." The female dragon, Lyralii, lifted her head weakly as they landed. Her mental voice was faint but clear as she spoke to both Maya and Ethan. "Ethan, old friend. I had hoped I might find you before the end. The fires have destroyed our hiding place and contaminated our water source. My children are sick, and I fear I do not have much time left." Maya immediately went to work examining Lyralii and her babies, drawing upon everything Ethan had taught her about dragon anatomy and health. What she found made her heart sink. The mother dragon was suffering from severe smoke inhalation and dehydration, while the dragonlings were weak from lack of proper nutrition and clean water. "We have to get them to safety immediately," Maya said, her mind already working on the logistics. "Our valley has clean water and shelter, but I don't think Lyralii is strong enough to fly that far." "I will carry her," Ethan said without hesitation. "You can take the young ones. They're small enough that you could manage all 3 if we make a harness of some kind." Maya quickly fashioned a carrier from rope and fabric, creating a secure way to transport the baby dragons while riding on Ethan's back. Lyralii was reluctant to trust her children to a human, but she was too weak to object when Maya gently placed the little ones in their makeshift carrier. The flight back to their valley was tense and difficult. Lyralii had to stop several times to rest, and Maya was constantly worried that one of the baby dragons might fall from the carrier. But, finally, after what felt like hours of careful flying, they reached the safety of their hidden sanctuary. Maya spent the next week nursing the dragon family back to health. She used every skill she had learned from caring for Ethan, combined with new instincts that seemed to come from her expanding bond with dragonkind. Gradually, Lyralii regained her strength, and the baby dragons began to play and explore their new home with typical youthful curiosity. As Lyralii recovered, she told Maya and Ethan her story. She had been hiding in a series of remote caves for over a decade, carefully avoiding all contact with humans while she raised her children in secret. The baby's father had been killed by hunters when they were still very young, leaving Lyralii to care for them alone. I knew the risks of raising dragonlings in this modern world, Lyralii explained, but I could not bear the thought of our species dying out completely. These three represent the future of our kind, assuming they can survive to adulthood in a world that still fears us. Maya was fascinated by the baby dragons, who seemed to have inherited abilities from both their parents. They were naturally curious about Maya and showed no fear of humans, unlike their mother's cautious attitude. The smallest of the three, a little female with scales that shifted between silver and blue, seemed particularly drawn to Maya and would often curl up in her lap during the evenings. "She's bonding with you," Ethan observed with amusement. Dragon young often form attachments to the first beings they encounter who show them kindness. That little one may grow up to be a dragon tamer's partner herself. The presence of Lyralii and her children transformed life in the hidden valley. Suddenly, their quiet sanctuary was filled with the sounds of dragonlings playing and learning, and Maya found herself helping to care for an entire dragon family. She taught the young ones basic skills like fishing and identifying safe plants, while Lyralii instructed them in dragon lore and the ancient ways of their people. As the weeks passed, Maya began to realize that their little group represented something unprecedented in the modern world, a functioning community that included both dragons and humans working together as equals. They had created exactly the kind of partnership that had existed centuries ago, before fear and misunderstanding had driven their species apart. But Maya also understood that their hidden valley, no matter how safe it seemed, was not a permanent solution. The baby dragons would grow quickly, and soon they would need more space and resources than the valley could provide. More importantly, keeping them hidden away from the world meant that the ancient partnership between dragons and humans would remain secret, benefiting no one except themselves. "We can't stay hidden forever," Maya said during one of their evening discussions. "These little ones deserve to grow up in a world where they don't have to fear humans, and humans deserve to know that dragons still exist. But how do we bridge that gap safely?" "The world has changed significantly since the old days," Lyralii observed. "Modern humans have access to information and communication technologies that could either help us or destroy us, depending on how they're used. We would need to be very careful about how we reveal ourselves." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps we should start small. Find individual humans who might be receptive to learning about dragons, people who have the wisdom and courage to keep our secrets until the world is ready for the truth." Maya had been thinking along the same lines, and she had an idea about where they might find such people. "What about scientists and researchers who study endangered species? They're already dedicated to protecting threatened animals, and they understand the importance of conservation efforts." Over the following days, Maya researched various wildlife conservation organizations and academic institutions, looking for individuals who might be sympathetic to their cause. She was particularly interested in finding people who studied extinction events and species recovery, reasoning that such researchers would understand the significance of discovering that dragons had survived. Her research led her to Dr. Sarah Chen, a conservation biologist at the University of Washington who specialized in large predator recovery programs. Dr. Chen had written extensively about the importance of preserving apex predators and their ecosystems, and her published papers showed a deep understanding of the complex relationships between different species. "She's also my cousin," Maya realized with surprise as she read through Dr. Chen's biography. "I haven't seen her since I was little, but I remember my parents talking about her work with endangered species. If anyone would be receptive to learning about dragons, it would be her." But, approaching Dr. Chen would require Maya to reveal her own identity, which meant abandoning the anonymity she had maintained since leaving home months ago. She would have to trust that her cousin would understand why she had disappeared and would be willing to help rather than turning them over to the authorities. After long discussions with Ethan and Lyrelii, Maya decided to take the risk. Using a secure communication method she had learned during her research, she sent Dr. Chen a carefully worded message that revealed nothing specific but requested a private meeting to discuss a discovery of enormous scientific importance. Dr. Chen's response came quickly and was more intriguing than Maya had expected. Maya? Is that really you? Your parents have been worried sick since you disappeared. Whatever you've discovered, I'm willing to listen. But first, you need to know that you're not the only one with secrets. I've been investigating reports of unusual large predator sightings in the Pacific Northwest, and some of the evidence I've gathered suggests that there might be species still alive that science considers extinct. Maya felt her heart race as she read her cousin's message. It seemed almost too good to be true that Dr. Chen was already investigating phenomena that might be related to dragons. But it also meant that their window of opportunity for making contact safely might be limited if other researchers were closing in on the truth. After several more exchanges of messages, they arranged to meet at a remote research station that Dr. Chen used for her fieldwork. Maya would come alone initially, to gauge her cousin's reaction and determine whether it was safe to reveal the full truth about dragons. The meeting took place on a crisp autumn morning at an abandoned fire lookout tower deep in the mountains. Maya arrived first, her enhanced senses alert for any sign that Dr. Chen had brought backup or was planning to betray her. But when her cousin appeared on the hiking trail below, she was alone and carrying only a backpack of research equipment. Maya! Dr. Chen called out as she climbed the stairs to the lookout platform. I can't believe it's really you. Do you have any idea how many people have been looking for you? Maya felt a pang of guilt as she saw the worry and relief in her cousin's eyes. Dr. Chen was older than Maya remembered, with gray streaks in her black hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of years spent outdoors in all kinds of weather. But her smile was warm and genuine, and Maya could sense that her cousin's primary emotion was joy at their reunion rather than anger about her disappearance. I'm sorry I couldn't contact you sooner, Maya said, giving her cousin a tight hug. I had to be sure it was safe. What I'm about to tell you will change everything you think you know about the natural world. Dr. Chen listened with growing amazement as Maya told her an edited version of her story, leaving out some of the more fantastic details but conveying the essential truth about dragons and her role as a dragon tamer. To her credit, Dr. Chen didn't interrupt or express disbelief, even when Maya described abilities that should have been impossible according to modern science. This explains so much, Dr. Chen said when Maya finished her account. I've been finding evidence for months that didn't make sense according to conventional wildlife biology. Burn patterns that suggested controlled fire use by large animals, tracks that didn't match any known species, and electromagnetic anomalies in areas where large predator sightings were reported. You believe me? Maya asked, hardly daring to hope that it could be so simple. I believe you because the evidence supports your claims, Dr. Chen replied. But, more than that, I can see that you've changed since you left home. There's something different about you, something that suggests you've experienced things far beyond normal human understanding. Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her. Having an adult ally, especially one with scientific credentials and resources, would make everything easier. But she also knew that this was just the first step in what would be a long and difficult process. I want you to meet them, Maya said. But I need your promise that you'll keep this secret until we're all sure it's safe to reveal the truth. You have my word, Dr. Chen said solemnly. But, Maya, you should know that you're not going to be able to keep this hidden forever. The world is getting smaller every year, and satellite surveillance technology is advancing rapidly. Sooner or later, someone else is going to discover your dragons whether you want them to or not. Maya nodded, knowing her cousin was right. That's why we need to control how this information comes out. If the discovery is made public in the right way, by the right people, it might actually help dragons instead of endangering them. As they hiked back down from the lookout tower together, Maya felt cautiously optimistic about the future for the first time in months. Finding Dr. Chen was like discovering a bridge between her hidden world with the dragons and the larger human community. With her cousin's help, they might actually be able to create a new future where dragons and humans could coexist openly and safely. But she also knew that the hardest part was still ahead of them. Introducing Dr. Chen to Ethon, Lyralii, and the Dragonlings would be just the beginning of a process that could ultimately change the world. The last dragon's Tamer was about to become the first ambassador between two species that had been separated by centuries of mistrust and fear. As they reached the bottom of the mountain and prepared to return to their respective homes, Maya looked up at the sky where Ethon would soon be flying. Tomorrow, they would begin the most important chapter of their story together, one that would determine whether dragons would remain hidden legends or emerge as partners in building a better future for all the Earth's creatures.